As the night fell over the small town of Willow Creek, an eerie silence fell with it. The townspeople all knew not to venture out at this time of the night. Everyone had heard the stories of the ghostly figure that haunted the town, but no one ever dared to speak of it. However, that night, one curious teenager named Lily decided to venture out and explore the deserted streets of the town. Armed with only a flashlight and her wits, she began her journey. As she walked through the quiet streets, she heard strange noises that seemed to come from all around her. Despite the strange sounds, Lily continued walking until she reached an old abandoned house at the edge of town. The house was said to be cursed, and the townspeople had long avoided it. However, Lily couldn't resist the temptation to explore it. As she walked up to the front door, it suddenly creaked open, and a cold breeze blew past her. Lily shuddered, but she couldn't turn back now. She walked inside and shone her flashlight around the dusty room. There was nothing there, or so she thought. Suddenly, she saw a shadowy figure standing in front of her. Her heart began to race as she tried to run away, but her legs wouldn't move. The figure slowly crept towards her, and as it came closer, she could see its ghastly features. It was the ghostly figure that everyone had feared, with a long white dress and hair as black as coal. Lily tried to scream, but no sound came out of her mouth. The figure reached out to grab her, but before it could make contact, Lily woke up screaming in her bed. It was all just a nightmare, or so she thought. The next night, Lily heard the same strange noises outside her window. She tried to ignore them, but they grew louder and louder until she could take it no more. She peeked outside her window and saw the same ghostly figure from her nightmare standing outside her house. Panicking, she locked all the doors and windows, but the figure seemed to move through the walls as if they weren't there. It was getting closer and closer, and Lily knew that she had to do something to stop it. She searched her room for anything that could help her, and her eyes fell on a small mirror on her dresser. Without thinking, she held the mirror up to the figure and watched as it disappeared into thin air. From that day forward, Lily never ventured out at night again. She knew that the ghostly figure was still out there, waiting for its next victim. But she also knew that she had the power to protect herself, as long as she had her trusty mirror by her side. It was a cold and stormy night, and a group of friends had decided to take a shortcut through the woods to get back home. As they walked deeper into the woods, they started to feel a sense of unease. It was as if they were being watched by something lurking in the shadows. Suddenly, they heard a loud scream, and they ran towards the direction of the sound. As they got closer, they saw a small cabin in the clearing. The door was slightly ajar, and they could hear someone or something moving inside. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. They cautiously opened the door and were greeted by the sight of a woman sitting in the corner of the room, staring blankly at the wall. She was wearing a tattered dress, and her hair was matted with blood. The friends tried to approach her, but she suddenly turned towards them with an expressionless face. They froze in fear as she let out a blood-curdling scream. They tried to run out of the cabin, but the door slammed shut, trapping them inside. The woman started to crawl towards them, and they could see that her eyes had turned black. She lunged towards them, and they fought back with whatever they could find in the room. They managed to knock her out and tried to escape, but the door wouldn't budge. As they searched for another way out, they found a diary on the floor. It belonged to the woman, and it revealed a disturbing truth. She had been possessed by an evil spirit that had been lurking in the woods for centuries, feeding on the souls of those who stumbled upon its path. The friends realized that they were not the first victims of this malevolent spirit, and they knew that they had to put an end to its reign of terror. They gathered their courage and decided to perform a ritual to banish the spirit back to where it came from. With the help of the diary, they recited the incantation, and the spirit let out a deafening scream. The cabin shook and the doors flew open. They ran out into the woods, and as they looked back, they saw the cabin collapse into a pile of rubble. As they made their way back home, they knew that they had narrowly escaped the clutches of the malevolent spirit. They also knew that they had a responsibility to warn others about the dangers that lurked in the woods. The memory of that terrifying night would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Lucas had always been fascinated by the abandoned house at the edge of town. It was a large 2-story Victorian mansion that had been vacant for years, and rumors had circulated that the previous owners had disappeared without a trace. Lucas had always been curious, but he never had the nerve to explore it. One day, Lucas met a group of fellow thrill-seekers who shared his curiosity about the abandoned house. They decided to explore it together one night, hoping to unravel the mystery behind the disappearances. They made their way through the overgrown garden and pushed open the creaky front door. As they stepped inside, they were greeted by a musty smell and a sense of unease. The group shone their flashlights around the room and saw that the furniture was covered in a thick layer of dust. Spiderwebs hung from the ceiling, and the wallpaper was peeling. They started to explore the house, and as they went deeper inside, strange things began to happen. Doors opened and closed on their own, and they heard whispers coming from the walls. The group tried to dismiss it as their imagination, but their fear was starting to take hold. As they reached the upper floor, they heard footsteps coming towards them. They turned around to see a figure standing at the end of the hallway. It was a woman, dressed in old-fashioned clothing, and her face was twisted into an expression of anger. The woman lunged towards them, and the group tried to run. They stumbled down the stairs and burst out of the front door, but the woman was hot on their heels. They ran through the garden and into the street, and they could hear the woman's laughter echoing behind them. The group managed to escape, but they knew that something was not right. They started to experience strange things in their own homes. Objects would move on their own, and they would hear whispers in the middle of the night. They realized that the spirit of the angry woman had followed them back. The group decided to seek help from a local medium. The medium listened to their story and told them that the woman they had encountered was the spirit of the previous owner of the house. Her husband had disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and she had been consumed by grief and anger. She had taken up residence in the house and had been tormenting anyone who dared to enter. The medium advised the group to perform a ritual to banish the spirit back to where it came from. They gathered at the abandoned house and recited the incantation. Suddenly, the house started to shake, and the angry woman let out a blood-curdling scream. The group watched as the house collapsed into rubble, and the spirit disappeared into the ether. They thought they had put an end to the spirit's torment, but they were wrong. The spirit of the angry woman had latched onto one of the group members and had possessed him. The group soon realized that the possessed member was acting strangely. He would speak in an unfamiliar voice, and his eyes would turn black. They knew they had to act quickly before it was too late. They sought help from the medium once again, and she advised them to perform another ritual to banish the spirit. This time the ritual was more complex, and they had to gather rare ingredients from all over town. Finally, they were ready to perform the ritual. They gathered in a secluded area and recited the incantation. The possessed member let out a deafening scream, and the spirit was banished back to where it came from. The group watched as the possessed member collapsed onto the ground unconscious. They rushed him to the hospital, where he was treated for his injuries. Thanks for watching today's video. Please consider subscribing and hitting the like button. It really helps us out. And until next time, stay safe and never wander too far from the light.